Hello there, everyone. Good to see you. We're back talking about discussion board 7 this week. So, good to see you, Chris.
You too.
Yeah, thanks. Always. So we're talking about a little tidbit from your Waltke reading, and getting into Hebrews 11. But let me just put us in the frame of mind. We're looking at the patriarchal. Did I say that right? Patriarchal narrative readings. And we're going to carefully look at Hebrews 11, 1 to 16. I think I brought it up here. I'll flip back to that in a second. But looking at Hebrews 11, 1 to 16, especially verses 8 and on, consider the following questions. Based solely upon your reading of Genesis, would you conclude that Abraham was indeed looking forward to a heavenly city? Why or why not? And then, in reconciling the Genesis account with Hebrews 11, to what extent do you believe Abraham fully understood the homeland he was looking forward to? In answering this question, choose one of the following two positions to defend. 1, Abraham felt like a stranger on earth and knew that his home was with God in another place. However, he didn't know how, where, when, or why this would occur. Having seen them and greeted them from afar, verse 13 describes Abraham's hope that God would one day somehow bring the wanderings to an end in a home whose designer and builder is God. Second, option 2. Abraham was told by God, direct revelation, that his true home, underlined, was future and heavenly. Having seen them and greeted them from afar, describes a heavenly vision given to Abraham of a future home he would inherit. Similarly to Christians today, Abraham may have looked forward to the resurrection from the dead, the vindication of the righteous, and eternal life with God. Okay. Dun 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 dun. Now, students typically were favoring one or the other. What do you think?
I think the first position was more popular.
Why do you think that is?
I think, well, that would be my position, I guess, in a sense, is that when you read Genesis, there's very little about, say, a heavenly city, and this hope that Abraham is said in Hebrews to have had. So to sort of doing that reconciliation thing, I think most people want to go right in the middle, which is like, oh yes, Hebrews is right and Genesis is right. I'll meet in the middle and say Abraham had a vague hope, rather than sort of taking Hebrews more at its word. But yeah.
Taking Hebrews at its word, you can just keep holding that mic there. Let's look at those verses from verse 8 on. You know, it says, by faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. Isn't that, Kevin, you want to say hi?
Yeah, hi.
Good to see you. Good to see you. We're never alone here.
Are they going to understand a Canadian accent?
Well, we've had 8 weeks for them to start picking it up. Yeah. They all get a can of maple syrup at the end of the course.
No. It's expensive stuff.
There's no other gifts that you guys have up
Your
there.
joke was funny in the email, by the way.
We joke here at MDL, friends. So where was I? I was reading scripture very reverently. Okay, by faith Abraham obeyed, and he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. By faith he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. By faith, Sarah herself received power to conceive even when she was past the age, since she considered, since she considered him faithful, who had promised. I think it's always amazing how what's going on here in Hebrews. First of all, they're honoring those of faith. That had a lot of flaws. Didn't always actually have a whole lot of faith, to be honest. Yeah. Sarah had some issues. Abraham had some issues. I have some issues, but Abraham had a lot of issues. I mean, he was fine with people sleeping with his wife and pretending it was his sister. Sarah laughed at God and didn't seem all that faithful, to be honest. And yet they're remembered as fathers of faith. Yep. Which is a powerful thing. Also to be aware that the author of Hebrews is a New Testament author, so he's not writing necessarily from Abraham's perspective. He's essentially giving a theological outworking of what happened between Abraham and God. Or we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Abraham had a relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
He believed God.
Mm-hmm.
That, from Abraham's perspective, that's all we really know happened. We don't really know that Abraham wasn't an Old Testament author like David or Solomon. He wasn't a prophetic writer. So we're not getting all of Abraham's thoughts. Did he theologically specifically have these thoughts that while this is happening, that this is what is going to happen in this future hope and that sort of thing? Well, I mean, we can't really say specifically how Abraham would have communicated that reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
What the author of Hebrews is doing is he's giving the theology of what effectively happened because of Abraham's faith. So because of Abraham's faith, this is what is going on. So I'm pointing to it here, and you can't see me pointing. I'm just referring back to these verses.
Verse 10.
Right, verse 10. So in essence, we know that the outworking of Abraham believing God meant effectively that he was looking forward to this future city foundations. And what was this city? Now that's for your next course. That's for New Testament Lit,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll kind of leave that as a nice little open-ended question as you segue into that. But going back to these questions here. Do you have any more comments, Chris, just about maybe the thought process of students as they're weighing these two things, and maybe giving them, like, do you really want to choose a side? Do you enjoy having the tension between both worlds?
Mm-hmm.
Where would you ideally like to see people struggle as they talk about this?
Yeah, I would just say to struggle with maybe the larger question of how to relate if you read my post from earlier this week, how to relate the Old and New Testaments, and often that the way the Old Testament is used in the New will add things that will be like, or maybe use a verse in a way that really might bring new meaning into it. And then you ask the question, well, what is the New Testament doing with the Old? What should I do with the Old then?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to give you the answer. You just have to understand that as something that when you read, say, Hebrews, which is the ultimate of problems in this area, like the first few chapters, you just say, how is the Old Testament? Like, go back to the Old Testament passage that's being used, read it and say, was that the original thing going on? I'm not sure. And then sort of do a little comparative work, play around with it, and see what Scripture's doing, and you'll learn about Scripture through that process.
Good. Yeah, so again, as usual, we're not trying to make you have a certain answer, but more looking at the process that you're going through mentally as you come to a conclusion here, which is always a fun process. So again, going back to looking at the Old Testament and then these New Testament passages that refer back to the Old Testament, I think this is going to be a pivotal piece in your academic process to start seeing how these things went. When you study Hebrews, looking at, like, okay, the intent of this author, what was it? Did he have to use Abraham as an example here? Was he pulling from maybe several different options of what he could have used to get his point across? Does that affect the way that you interpret the passage? These are all just kind of questions we want you guys to be, having in your mind as you learn to think critically as Old Testament and New Testament, we're Christians. I was going to call you scholars. Let's be honest. We're not scholars, at least not yet, so I can't call you scholars yet. But you very bright Bible students. So, anything else? Is that pretty much it for the discussion this week? Yeah, so good work, good discussion, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.